Before we dive into the pathophysiology of obesity, I want to talk about what this word actually means. Pathophysiology is a story of when things go wrong in the body. Think of it as behind the scenes explanation. Physiology is how the body normally works or how it should work. For example, your heart pumps blood, your lungs bring in the oxygen. Pathophysiology is what happens when the normal processes get thrown off balance. For example, if we are talking about asthma, physiology tells us how air normally moves in and out of the lungs. Pathophysiology explains how, during an asthma attack, the airways tighten and fill with mucus, making it harder to breathe. In medical terms, bronchospasm. So instead of being just about the disease name, it's about understanding how and why the body changes once that disease sets in. I hope that explained the term that we use in medicine a lot, pathophysiology, a little bit better. Now that you understand what pathophysiology means, let's bring it in context of obesity. Today, we are going to dive into a question that affects millions of people but is often misunderstood. Why do some people struggle with their weight more than others? Is it about willpower, lifestyle choices, or is it something much deeper? The answer is overwhelmingly genetic. And the story of how we learned, which is like how genetics play a role, is both fascinating and eye-opening. The genetic foundation, let's start with the science part. Studies of twins have shown that about 70% of our tendency to gain weight is genetic. In other words, if you ever notice that all the people in a certain family have the same body type, you're not imagining it, it is the biology at work. This insight traces back to the groundbreaking work of Dr. Albert Stunkard in the 1980s. At the time, obesity was considered a behavioral problem. It was thought of as a matter of willpower. Doctors in the 1800s even described it as a disorder of self-control. But Dr. Stunkard challenged that view. In one famous study, he looked at over 500 adopted adults. He compared their body weight to their adoptive parents, the ones who had raised them, cooked their meals, set their household habits, and to compare them to their biological parents. What were the results? The results were that there was no correlation at all with the adoptive parents. Instead, the adoptees' body weights closely matched their biological parents. He followed that up with twin studies also. He studied hundreds of pairs of twins, some raised together and others apart. And again, he noticed that their body mass index, or BMI, was almost identical, regardless of whether they grew up in the same home or separate. This was powerful evidence that genetics and not environment was driving the body weight. What does this mean for us? So does this mean that genetics is all to blame and environment doesn't matter? Not at all. Even Dr. Stunkard did not believe that. What it does mean is that weight gain is a biological phenomenon first and foremost. Restrictive diets, extreme exercise programs, they rarely work long-term because they don't change the underlying biology. Since Stunkard's time, scientists have identified over 500 genes that are linked to obesity. These genes influence metabolism, appetite, and fat storage. They help explain why two people can eat the same meal, do the same workout, and see completely different results on the scale. The modern science, the modern environment, has shown that while genes set the foundation, the environment builds the house. Think about what's changed since the 1980s and why we have seen a rise in obesity all across the society. More women entered the workforce, leading to less cooking at home, industrialized food production, and government subsidies creating cheap and highly processed foods. The foods are processed, highly palatable, and calorie-dense. Air conditioning made it easier to stay indoors. The technology put entertainment at our fingertips, so we have unrestricted, unregulated, and unlimited screen time. The jobs became sedentary, limiting the physical activity. The work hours became longer, so there's less time for movement and less face-to-face connection, leaving no time for real social relationships. All of these factors created a world where obesity became more common, and it happened fast. too fast to be explained by genetics alone. So the story that this episode goes over is that genetics load the gun, but the environment pulls the trigger. And here's the big takeaway. It isn't simply a matter of willpower. It's a complex interaction between our genetic blueprint and the modern environment we live in. That's why the solutions that focus only on diet or exercise often fail, and why new approaches from medications to structural changes in society are essential. Understanding this isn't about giving up. It's about shifting blame off individuals and recognizing that biology and society both play a massive role. When we accept that, we can start building better, we can do better, and we can have more compassionate solutions to manage this epidemic. That's it for today's episode. If you've ever struggled with weight, I hope this helps you see that it is not your fault. Next time, we'll explore other contributors to pathogenesis of obesity. Thank you.